Let me share a story with you that happened a few years ago. I was still at my desk, it was close to midnight, and I kept endlessly rewriting the first paragraph of an email. Now, it wasn't any particularly important email, it wasn't to a dean or funding agency, but it was to my supervisor with a research update and a question. However, I kept worrying about sounding stupid, and those doubts kept creeping up in my head if the analysis was even solid. 40 minutes later, I sent the email off finally and went home. My brain was fried, my shoulders were tense, and I had that feeling that I made zero progress that evening, at least not on real work. The next morning I came into work and I got an email saying, hey, let's talk in person. I had just spent 40 minutes the night before on basically nothing. And this was not just one bad night. I realized perfectionism was eating into my work time. I kept obsessing over the small things and tried to polish them, and ultimately kept leaving the big projects untouched. So I knew it was time to tackle my perfectionism. So I came up with a system to deal with this. But back then, it was initially just a simple rule. Whenever there was a loaded task or email paragraph or figure, I gave myself 30 minutes. If I was still stuck after 30 minutes, whatever I had just became a rough version 0. My only goal was to make something exist. Just something that I could pass on, send off, or just stop working for the day. Now, there's been a lot of research out there that explains this whole scenario. When the stakes are high, your brain triggers and sees it as a threat. And once your brain considers that, it shifts into avoidance. Ultimately, when you see a tiger, you have 3 options: fight, flight, or freeze. None of them are good areas to actually get stuck in. So instead of taking whatever you have to do and turn it into this big project, once you consider it a rough draft, it lowers the perceived risk. And for me, it turned flawless fantasies into something actionable and movable. It gave some psychological breathing room that is so important when you're trying to tackle the big things. So in my early career, I had this pattern. Whenever there was a new research project, I became super excited about it. I created an outline, had some ideas flowing, and then this voice creeped up. I kept telling myself, hold on, I needed to read more, needed to properly understand the topic matter before I could do anything, or I needed a long, focused time block where I can just pour my energy in and then finally get the project going. But what I ended up with a few months later were beautiful notes everywhere, scripts and PDFs organized everywhere, to-do lists with heroic length, but the manuscript still was not written. And I always came back to that one question: why can't I finish? And where this really hit was for this one particular paper that I was writing. I had the data, the results were ready, the first draft actually existed. But I kept refining the introduction forever. I kept polishing figures endlessly. I just wanted to double check a couple of analyses, and nothing ever felt good enough. And by doing that, I just refused to send an imperfect draft. I waited for that flawlessness in my head that we're all aiming for. Spoiler, that moment never came. At some point I left the field, and ultimately that draft is still on my hard drive. There's one thing I didn't quite understand back then. Whenever you work anywhere, there are 2 types of work that you're doing. One is your workshop and the other one is the gallery. Workshops are for rough and messy work. Sketches, prototypes, half ideas. It's private space where mistakes are allowed. Nobody needs to see that. The gallery, on the other hand, is for finished, polished pieces. This could be papers, talks, and any public-facing work. I tried to live in that gallery. My idea was that by not doing the workshop, I would actually save some time. Every email became a mini paper, every draft was a final result in disguise, and every idea needed to be fully formed before I was willing to share it. So I started fewer risky things, and everything took painfully long. In academia, standards matter, so the gallery matters, but your workshop needs just as much protection. Imperfect work must be allowed to exist. For me, that meant the question changed. It turned from, how can I make this perfect, to how can I make space for messy things? Perfectionism on the surface looks like high standards, but it leads to us saying we're not ready yet. It feels like we want proper work, but often it's simply procrastination dressed up beautifully. Quite often, it's just one of 3 fears hiding underneath. It's the fear of looking stupid, the fear of wasting effort badly, or the fear of the best still not being good enough. But this fear turns any task into a threat. Threat mode keeps people frozen. So I knew I needed to change things. I needed a smallest repeatable loop, something that lets me move despite fear. And the 3 steps I'm going to share with you, they're simple on purpose. Anything too complex will help perfectionism creep in. And the system that I've come up with, the 3 Ps, is the thing that I fall back on when I stall. The first P stands for permission. It's the permission to have a lower bar for your first version. I tell myself, this first version should suck. It's its purpose to not be good. I also just call it the brain dump intentionally. Tasks become quick experiments, and standards are saved for later. The opposite is harsh self-talk, and that feels threatening. And of course your brain will react. Quite common is a freeze response. On the other hand, if you show some self-compassion, you keep the whole system calmer. Good for enough now is a great mindset because you can always polish it later. It makes starting actually possible and move the needle forward. The next P stands for pilot. Pilot a tiny version. A pilot must stay really small. My rule of thumb is 60 minutes of focused work. Otherwise, it just becomes a full project. The 10-page paper could be a 1-page rough outline. A scary email, 3 clear bullet points saying why you're emailing them, what you want them to know, and what the next steps are. Pilots are nothing new. This concept is borrowed from behavioral experiments. These are small tests that reduce imagined danger. Ultimately, it generates evidence that you can actually do this and not just worry about them. It can help turn your overwhelm into concrete steps. And be honest, editing beats conjuring from nothing. The last P stands for polish. My old habits just mixed writing and editing. Whenever I had a sentence, I tweaked it, I deleted it, I rewrote it, and then I kept cycling through it over and over again. Paragraphs took forever to finish. Now I'm separating the creating from the perfecting. The creation pass only is a rough output. It doesn't need to be perfect, because the polish pass will come later with a little bit of distance to what I've just done. And there's a reason behind it. Task switching burns mental energy. And who has mental energy to spare? A single-purpose pass is so much more efficient. And it creates some distance. It cools your emotional attachment down to what you've just created. That will make it easier to improve your existing draft, and you're less haunted by the impossible ideal of creating perfect things straight off the bat. So my suggestion is try it out on a project. Grab a notebook or a notes app. Choose one project that is currently stuck, maybe because of perfectionism, and then write 1 sentence naming that thing. Once you see it on paper, you have something to tackle it with. And more importantly, you can give your workshop space a project to work on. In order to do so, write down your reasons why you keep delaying. This is quite often you don't have enough time, you need to read more, you're just not ready yet. And then ask yourself where the fear comes in. Once you've identified that fear, commit to a small pilot. Choose a 30-minute tiny step. 1 page of bullet points or a sketch for a figure that you need for a draft. You can also practice an explanation or create a rough outline for something. Anything that's concrete and visible will show you progress and not perfection, but that's okay. Then pick a slot for your workshop. Pick a time within 48 hours from now and treat it like an important appointment. Imagine you're meeting a loved one or the love of your life and protect it from calendar creep. Label it workshop version 0 or brain dump. But most importantly, once you've made that decision, your brain can finally rest. Whenever you're stuck, remember the 3 Ps. Permission, pilot, polish later. This small loop beats complicated system, hands down, especially when you're already overloaded. Use whenever perfectionism shows up and make that first move. If you feel up for it, use accountability. Tell a trusted person that you started. Say it's rough, but tell them it exists. This is the opposite of perfectionism. Real work grows from rough starts, and pretty can always come later.